10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 45. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in. First, I want to shout out to all my listeners. Thank you so much for faithfully downloading this podcast every single week, and I really hope that you're getting something out of it. A few items of housekeeping before we get into the episode today. If you like the show, please go on to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That really helps us to get the podcast out to more people like you that would really enjoy it and could use it to get better. Second thing, make sure you go and check out the website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10, minutejazzlesson.com. Got all sorts of cool stuff there, including all of our back episodes. Make sure you go and check out our store section. Got some cool improvisational tools there and many more to come over the next couple of months. Also, really exciting thing that's going to happen in the next few weeks here. We are going to be opening up a membership section of the website, and you're going to get all kinds of cool stuff based around transcription every month for a small fee. I will definitely announce that on the podcast, but if you'd like to be one of the first people to hear when our membership section opens up, make sure you go onto the website, find the sign up for the mailing list, which is over on the right side of the website. Scroll down a little bit, and you'll see a form to sign up for our mailing list. Our mailing list members hear about everything that we do first and foremost. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you go and sign up for the mailing list to hear about all the cool stuff that's coming up. Super excited about the membership website. We're going to be featuring a different transcription every single month. We're going to break down that transcription, pull out all the vocabulary, and it's basically going to be like a ready-made lesson for you that you will get if you become a member and decide to support the podcast. So more information on that to come, but it will be coming up very soon, and I will be sure to let you guys know. All right, let's jump into the episode. So today, we're going to do an episode about a question that one of our listeners had. So this week's episode goes out to Fred. He was asking about the minor 2-5-1. So talking about what happens and what alterations we make to a 2-5 when it is in a minor key. So there's a couple different things that happen. This week, we're going to focus on the minor chord, because this is a little bit of a hard thing to understand if you don't have much experience with it. And it's actually not a minor chord, it's a half diminished chord. So that's going to be the meat of this episode, is going to be talking about the differences between minor and half diminished, the scales and chord tones that go along with it. And then next week what we're going to do is we'll follow up with a part 2 on putting it all together. So putting the half diminished chord with the dominant chord, and what really changes, some strategies to think about your minor 2-5-1 a little bit differently than your major 2-5-1. So the first thing I want to talk about is that this is, like all things in jazz, not a hard and fast rule. So when I say a minor 2-5-1, what I'm talking about is, in general, if we're doing a 2-5 to a minor key, we see this, half diminished minor chord followed by a dominant chord with a flat 9. Now, jazz has no rules, right? Really, when you get down to it, jazz has never had rules. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all these amazing jazz musicians playing stuff that we've never heard before, unless they decided to break the rules. So this is a general rule. I would say that the majority of the time when you see a minor 2-5, it's going to be in the fashion that we're going to talk about today. So as I said, let's talk about the minor first, the 2 chord, all right? So what usually happens in a minor key, sometimes even in major keys this happens, is that we go from a regular minor 7 chord, okay, based off of the Dorian mode, and we're going to change that to a minor 7 flat 5 chord, or a lot of times people will call it half diminished. So those are interchangeable terms. In some real books or lead sheets you might see, let's use D minor, D minor 7 flat 5, okay? In other lead sheets or real books, you may see this symbol, D followed by a circle with a line through the middle of that circle, 7. Those two things mean exactly the same, all right? They're both what we call half diminished or minor 7 flat 5. So let's talk about that for a second. It's actually pretty simple. If we took a D minor chord and we thought about the 4 chord tones to that, 1, 3, 5, and 7, it would be D, F, A, and C, right? So we have 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. All we are literally doing, just like the chord symbol says, is we're going to flat the 5 on top of what we already have. So then it would be D, F, A flat, C. Okay? So what we're doing is we're taking 1, flat 3. Now we have flat 5 and flat 7. All right? And this is called half diminished for a very specific reason, because if you think about a diminished 7th chord, which we had talked about in episodes a couple of weeks back, we have 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. So in essence, we are only halfway diminishing the chord by just giving you that flat 5. Another way you could think about it is it's a diminished triad with a flat 7 on top of it, and that's how you get your minor 7 flat 5 chord, or your half diminished. All right? Shoot me an email if you have any questions about that. I know that can be confusing, but just know that you are definitely going to see it written both ways in lead sheets and real books, like I said. All right, so let's start out by hearing what those 4 chord tones sound like. So that should give you an idea of what the tonality entails. It's a little bit darker than a regular minor 7 chord, right? This is the easy part. This is the thing that's pretty simple to figure out, especially if you know your minor 7 chords. This really shouldn't be that difficult for you to learn. The difficult part will be learning it in all the keys and really getting comfortable with it. So this would be my exercise number 1 for the half diminished 7 chord. You would really want to take this and you would want to get familiar with it before we start doing what we're doing next, which is going to be the scale that goes along with this chord, because the scale is a little bit more confusing. And I think there's definitely some mistaking in what this scale entails, and it's really important that we get the actual scale down. So here's the scale that goes along with it. All right, so what we want to do is we want to play 1, 2, or 9. You know, those notes are interchangeable. Here's one of the most common mistakes that gets made on one of these chords. A lot of people think that on a half diminished chord, you play the flat 9, but you actually don't. You're supposed to play the natural 9. So we go 1, 9, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, so this is not in the chord symbol anywhere, but we always want to play a flat 6 or a flat 13. However you want to think about it is totally fine. Just make sure that you are playing that flat 6 or flat 13. Then a flat 7, then you're back to 1. So the scale is actually pretty simple, except for a couple of mistakes that a lot of people make. A lot of people will play the flat 9. Don't do that. Make sure you play the natural 9. And then a lot of people will play the regular 6 or the 13. Don't do that. Make sure that you flat it. All right? So here's what that scale sounds like. So I'll give you a little bit more extended melodic kind of view of what's going on here. And these are really important as well, right? Because a good solo is a great combination of playing the chords and playing the scales. So you want to make sure that you learn both of these, but make sure that you get the chords down first. So the way that I'm going to be presenting this to you this week is in the form of what we call a harmonic exercise. And this is from one of my favorite professors in graduate school out from Western Michigan University, Dr. Scott Cowan. He had us practice these nonstop, and they were some of the best exercises that I ever have done, because really it encompasses a lot of the different chord symbols that you're going to see. So the reason why it's called Melodic is because we're going to start out by practicing the harmony over the chord, meaning we're going to play the chord tones and some of the extensions. And then we're going to finish up with the scale, so the melodic part of the exercise. So you combine those two things, we get a melodic exercise. So there's really not that much material to work on this week, but make sure that you have this stuff down before we get into part 2 next week, because part 2 is really going to have you you're going to have a really firm understanding of how to play the half diminished chords if we hope to get into some of the more complicated stuff. So make sure you go and download the PDF and work on this stuff before next week's episode so that you're in good shape when we start doing the entire minor 251. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Stay tuned for more exciting news about the member section of our website. Make sure you email me with any questions that you might have. Thanks to Fred for making the suggestion on these 2 episodes. I wish more people would do that. Really just get in touch with me and let me know what you're interested in. What are you currently wondering about? What do you want to get better at? And we'll definitely do an episode on that. You can get in touch with me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com, and I will make sure to get back to you, and we'll plan some new episodes together, which will be really exciting. All right, everybody, go on iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the podcast, and we will see you next week. Have a great one.